Before you immerse yourself in this incredible saga of destiny, delicious food, and a family reunited, make sure to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and comment below with where you're tuning in from. Your support empowers us to share more transformative and heartwarming stories. The Inheritance Dinner, a culinary challenge that unlocks generations of secrets. Imagine the impossible. A grieving millionaire offers his entire fortune for a single meal. Not a business deal, but a deeply personal plea to recreate a taste of lost childhood. But when the talented chef he hires, a woman with a hidden past and a dream of her own, arrives at his mansion, a mysterious phone call, and a long-dead grandmother set in motion a series of revelations that will change everything. What happens when food becomes a bridge between worlds, connecting not just two strangers, but generations of a family believed lost? Get ready for a story where every ingredient, every forgotten song, and every whispered memory leads to an astonishing discovery. A widower's desperate plea. It was a Tuesday afternoon in Charleston, South Carolina, one of those humid, stifling days where the very air seemed heavy. Isabella Izzy Morales walked through the historic cobblestone streets of the French Quarter, her backpack laden with kitchen tools and exotic spices. She had spent the last 3 years as an independent chef, preparing meals for affluent families, small weddings, and intimate events. It wasn't an easy life, but Izzy harbored a burning dream: to open her own restaurant serving authentic Creole cuisine. That day, she had a crucial appointment. Mrs. Eleanor Vance had commissioned her to prepare a special dinner for her husband. But upon arriving at the imposing address in her notebook, something felt off. The house was a majestic 2-story antebellum mansion with immaculately manicured gardens, but an unsettling silence enveloped it, as if uninhabited. Izzy checked the address once, twice, 3 times. Yes, it was the right place according to her notes. She took a deep breath and approached the main door, a heavy oak door with antique hardware gleaming under the sun. She raised her hand and knocked 3 times. The sound resonated throughout the house. A few seconds passed that felt like an eternity. Then she heard footsteps, slow but firm. The door opened slowly, and there he was, Mr. Julian Thorne, 35 years old, but with eyes that seemed to carry the weight of many more decades. He was tall, athletically built, with dark hair combed back and a perfectly trimmed beard. He wore an impeccable white linen shirt and dark trousers. But what struck Izzy most was his gaze. A profound sadness, as if he bore a sorrow he couldn't share with anyone. "Yes?" he asked in a grave but not hostile voice. "Good afternoon, sir. Excuse the intrusion. I'm here for the commission from Mrs. Eleanor Vance. She asked me to come prepare a special dinner for her husband," Izzy explained, showing her notepad. Julian stared at her, his eyes filled with an emotion she couldn't decipher. For a moment, the man seemed lost in thought, as if Izzy's words had awakened something very deep within him. "Eleanor," he murmured almost to himself. "Eleanor Vance was my grandmother. She passed away 3 months ago." Izzy's heart stopped for a second. A wave of sadness and confusion washed over her. How was that possible? The lady had spoken to her on the phone just last week, given her all the dinner details, and even paid half the fee in advance. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, sir. There must be some mistake. I spoke with her last week," Izzy said, her voice trembling. Julian studied her intently. There was something in this woman's sincerity that moved him. For months, he hadn't spoken to anyone other than his lawyer and the cleaning staff. Loneliness had been his only companion since losing his grandmother, the only family he had left. "Please, come in," he finally said, stepping aside. "I think we need to clarify the situation." Izzy hesitated for a moment. Everything about the situation seemed strange. but there was something in that man's voice that reassured her. She stepped inside the house and gasped. The interior was magnificent. High ceilings with wooden beams, antique pine floors, furniture that seemed to hold countless stories. But what impressed her most was the absence of life. The house was beautiful, but it felt empty, like a museum where no one truly lived. "Please, sit down," Julian told her, gesturing to a spacious living room with leather armchairs. "Would you like some coffee? Fresh water?" "A glass of water would be nice, thank you," Izzy replied, still processing what was happening. Julian disappeared for a few minutes and returned with 2 glasses of fresh water, with ice and lemon. He sat opposite her, maintaining a respectful distance. "Tell me exactly what my grandmother told you," he asked softly. Izzy pulled out her notebook and began to read her notes. She told him about the phone call, about how Mrs. Eleanor had been very specific with the menu. Traditional seafood gumbo, red beans and rice, homemade cornbread, and for dessert, bread pudding with bourbon sauce. She had also given very precise instructions about the ingredients and preparation method. "She told me it was for a very special occasion," Izzy added, "that it was for someone she loved very much and who hadn't enjoyed a good home-cooked meal in a long time." Izzy's words touched something very deep in Julian's heart. These were exactly the dishes his grandmother used to prepare for him when he was a child, when his parents traveled for business and he stayed with her. These were the flavors of his childhood, the happiest memories of his life. "My grandmother she was a very special woman," Julian said, his voice choked with emotion. "When my parents died in an accident when I was 12, she took care of me. She raised me with so much love, so much patience. Her cooking was her way of showing affection." Izzy felt a lump in her throat. She could see the pain in this man's eyes, and something within her was deeply moved. "After she died, I haven't been able to eat well. Nothing tastes the same. I've lost my appetite. I've lost so much," Julian continued. "This house is full of memories, but it's also full of emptiness." They sat in silence for a few moments. Izzy didn't know what to say. It was evident that this man was suffering, and she felt like an intruder in his pain. "Mr. Thorne," she finally said, I don't know how to explain your grandmother's call. Maybe someone is playing a very cruel trick, but I can assure you that I spoke with a lady who identified herself as Eleanor Vance. Her voice was sweet, maternal. She spoke of you with such love." Julian looked at her intently. There was something about this woman that intrigued him. Her sincerity was evident. But more than that, there was a warmth in her that he hadn't felt in a long time. "Do you know how to cook those dishes you mentioned?" he suddenly asked. "Yes, sir. I learned them from my own grandmother. She taught me all the secrets of traditional Creole cooking since I was a little girl." Julian got up and walked to the window. He gazed at his garden for a few moments, as if making a very important decision. "Miss, I'm sorry, you haven't told me your name." "Isabella Morales, sir. Izzy for short." "Izzy," he repeated, as if savoring the name. "I have a proposal that might sound strange." He turned to her with an expression Izzy couldn't interpret. There was determination in his eyes, but also something that looked like desperation. "For 3 months, I haven't tasted a meal that meant anything. For 3 months, this house hasn't had the aroma of a living kitchen. If you could prepare that dinner my grandmother commissioned you for, exactly as she asked." He paused, as if gathering courage to continue. "If you make that dinner, and manage to make it taste exactly how my grandmother made it, I give you my word that I will pay you anything you ask. More than that." Izzy felt her heart race. There was something about this man's intensity that made her nervous. "If you can make that dinner bring back, even for one night, the flavors of my childhood, the happy memories with my grandmother." Julian paused again, and what he said next changed everything. "I'll give you my entire fortune." Izzy was speechless. She had heard him right. Was this man offering her his inheritance for a dinner? Mr. Thorne, I don't understand. Your fortune for a dinner? Izzy, I have more money than I could spend in my lifetime. I inherited the family businesses, properties, investments. But none of that has brought back the happiness I lost when my grandmother died. If you can make me feel, for one night, like the child I was when she cared for me, if you can give me back that connection to the only happy moments I remember, then all that money will have been worth it. The sincerity in his voice was overwhelming. Izzy could see that this man wasn't joking. There was such deep sadness in him that it moved her to tears. But sir, how can you be sure that I can't be sure of anything, he interrupted. But something tells me you're here for a reason. My grandmother always said there are no coincidences, only blessings in disguise. Izzy felt a chill. She had heard those very words from her own grandmother many times. Do you accept my proposal? Julian asked, extending his hand. Izzy looked at that outstretched hand. She knew that if she took it, her life would change forever. But something in her heart told her she had to. I accept, she finally said, shaking his hand. But not for the money, Mr. Thorne. I accept because I believe you need to remember that life can still be beautiful. Julian smiled for the first time in months, a small but genuine smile. So, when do we start? Right now, if you'll permit me. I need to go to the market to buy fresh ingredients. A dinner like your grandmother prepared can't be made with just anything. Perfect. Take my credit card, buy everything you need. And Izzy? Yes, thank you. It's been a long time since I had hope of feeling anything again. As Izzy left the mansion for the market, she couldn't believe what had happened in less than an hour. Her life had taken a completely unexpected turn. But what she didn't know was that the next 20 minutes in that kitchen would not only change her destiny, but would reveal a secret that would turn everything upside down. What do you think is the true meaning behind Julian's desperate offer of his entire fortune for a single meal? Do you believe his grandmother's phone call was a genuine miracle or a strange coincidence? Share your theories in the comments. A familiar kitchen, a shared history. The Charleston market was at its busiest when Izzy arrived with Julian's credit card in hand. Vendors hawked their goods. The aromas of spices mingled in the air, and she felt in her element. There was something comforting about being surrounded by fresh ingredients, by the life pulsating at every stall. "Morning, Missy!" shouted Mr. Beaumont, the seafood vendor. "What can I get for you today?" "I need shrimp, Mr. Beaumont, but not just any shrimp. I need the best you have, the freshest, the most flavorful," Izzy replied with determination. Mr. Beaumont looked at her with curiosity. He had known Izzy for years, but he had never seen her so focused, so determined. "Well now, young lady, what's got you so serious today?" "It's a very special dinner, Mr. Beaumont, perhaps the most important of my life." The vendor nodded with understanding. In the market, everyone knew that when someone spoke of a special dinner, it wasn't just about food. It was about love, memories, moments that could change lives. Izzy scoured every stall with the meticulousness of a scientist. She chose the largest, freshest shrimp and Dewey's sausages that gave off an unmistakable smoky aroma. Plump red tomatoes, firm white onions, garlic that released its essence when squeezed. For the rice, she chose long grain that looked perfect. For the beans, she looked for varieties with the exact texture. And for the cornbread, she bought the freshest cornmeal she could find, because she knew she had to make it from scratch. "And the spices?" the spice vendor asked. "For the gumbo, you'll need spices, right?" "Yes, but not just any spices. I need a real Creole spice blend, the kind that comes in old jars, the kind that tastes of history and home at the same time." The vendor smiled and pulled some glass jars with handwritten labels from under the counter. "This is the best I have. My cousin brings it directly from New Orleans. It's real spice, not those imitations they sell in stores. Izzy smelled the spices and knew immediately they were perfect. They had that sweet yet deep aroma that only artisanal spices can have. When she returned to the mansion, Julian was waiting for her at the door. He had changed his formal clothes for a casual shirt and jeans, but his expression was still that of a man carrying a heavy burden. "Did you find everything you needed?" he asked, helping her with the bags. "Yes, sir. But now I need to see the kitchen. Every kitchen has its own personality, its own way of cooking. I need to understand how yours works." Julian led her to the kitchen, and when Izzy entered, she gasped. It was a dream kitchen, a 6-burner stove, double ovens, a central marble island, cooking utensils that looked like works of art. But what impressed her most was how untouched it looked, as if no one had cooked there in a long time. "My grandmother was the only one who cooked here," Julian explained, as if he had read her thoughts. "After she died, I haven't been able to come in much. It brings back too many memories." Izzy walked around the kitchen, touching the surfaces, opening drawers, familiarizing herself with every corner. There was something strange, familiar about the space, as if she had been there before. But she knew it was impossible. "May I ask you something, Mr. Thorne?" "Of course, and please call me Julian." "Julian, did your grandmother always live here? Did she cook in this very kitchen?" "Yes, this house has been in my family for generations. My grandmother married my grandfather here, raised my parents here, raised me here. This kitchen was her kingdom. She spent hours and hours preparing meals not only for the family, but for everyone who came in need." Izzy felt a strange connection with that information. Her own grandmother had told her stories about a very wealthy family she had worked for when she was young. A family that had a beautiful kitchen where she had learned many special recipes. "What was your grandmother's full name?" "Eleanor Vance Thorne. But before she married, she was Eleanor Vance Dubois." Izzy's heart stopped. Eleanor Vance Dubois. That name sounded familiar, very familiar. Her own grandmother, Clara Morales, had told her many times about a very kind lady named Eleanor Vance, who had taught her secret gumbo recipes. "Julian, did your grandmother ever have employees in the kitchen? Someone to help her?" "Yes, my grandmother always had help. She used to say that the kitchen was for sharing, not for suffering alone." "Why do you ask?" Izzy decided not to say anything yet. It could be a coincidence, though she doubted it more and more. She decided to focus on the cooking. "All right, Julian, I need you to leave me alone for a few hours. Cooking is like praying. I need concentration and silence." "Of course, I'll be in my study. If you need anything, just shout." When Julian left, Izzy was left alone in the kitchen. She took a deep breath and began to work. First, she put the shrimp in a hot pan. The aroma that was released immediately transported her to her grandmother's kitchen, where she had learned that cooking seafood was an art that required patience and love. While the shrimp cooked, she began to prepare the roux for the gumbo. She knew that the secret to good gumbo was not just in the ingredients, but in every step cooked with care. When the roux was ready, she began to chop the onion and garlic. Her hands moved with a precision that seemed instinctive, as if she knew exactly what to do. Then, something strange happened. As she chopped the onion, she began to hum a song. A song her grandmother used to sing to her when she was a child. A song that spoke of cooking with love to nourish the soul. But she didn't remember deciding to sing it. It just flowed from her. Suddenly, she heard footsteps. Julian had come downstairs and was standing at the kitchen entrance with an expression of utter astonishment. "What song is that?" he asked in a trembling voice. "It's a song my grandmother taught me." "Why?" "My grandmother sang that very song, exactly that song, with the same melody. She always sang it whenever she cooked." Izzy stopped chopping. They both stared at each other, as if beginning to understand something they couldn't explain. "What was your grandmother's full name?" Julian asked. Clara Morales Dubois," Julian murmured. "Was Dubois her maiden name?" "Yes. She was the daughter of Mrs. Genevieve Dubois and Mr. Louis Dubois." Julian turned pale. He walked towards Izzy slowly, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Izzy, my grandmother was Eleanor Vance Dubois, daughter of Mrs. Genevieve Dubois and Mr. Louis Dubois." The world stopped for both of them. Izzy felt her legs tremble. "That means that our grandmothers were sisters?" Julian completed. "Our grandmothers were sisters." Izzy leaned on the marble island. Everything was starting to make sense. The phone call from Eleanor Vance, the exact address, the specific recipes, the song she had started humming without thinking. "But that means we are," Izzy began to say. "Cousins. We're cousins," Julian said, approaching her. "But how is that possible? How did we never meet?" Izzy remembered her grandmother's stories. Clara had told her that she had an older sister who married a very wealthy man, but that after the wedding, the two families had grown distant. Social class differences, pride, misunderstandings that had become insurmountable barriers. "My grandmother told me she had a sister who married into a very rich family, but they lost touch afterwards, and she always regretted not being able to maintain the relationship. My grandmother also told me about a younger sister who married a humble man. She always said it was one of her great sorrows not to have been able to keep the family together." They both fell silent, processing the magnitude of what they had just discovered. But then Izzy realized something else. "Julian, do you think the phone call was from my grandmother, from the afterlife?" It seemed impossible, but they both knew that there were things in life that couldn't be explained by logic. Love, family, the bonds that unite people beyond death. "Maybe she wanted us to meet," Izzy said softly. "Maybe she wanted the family to reunite." Julian nodded. There were tears in his eyes, but for the first time in months, they weren't tears of sadness. "Izzy, I don't know what to say. All my life I've been alone. I thought I had no family, that when my grandmother died, I was completely alone in the world." "You were never alone, Julian, never. I've always been here. We just didn't know it." They hugged then, an embrace that healed years of loneliness, pain, and emptiness. It was the hug of two souls who had found their place in the world. But when they separated, Izzy remembered something important. "Julian, I still have to finish dinner. Now more than ever, I have to cook that perfect dinner. It's no longer just about the fortune. It's for our grandmothers, for family, for everything it means." Yes, of course, but Izzy, now that we know we're family, you don't need to cook for the fortune anymore. Everything I have is yours anyway." "No, Julian, I need to cook this dinner. I need to do it right. Not for the money, but because I feel our grandmothers are watching us. I feel that this dinner is a way to honor their memory and their love." Julian smiled. He had found not only his family, but someone who understood what truly mattered in life. "Then cook, cousin. Cook with all the love our grandmothers taught us." Izzy returned to her work. But now everything was different. Every movement, every ingredient, every aroma had a special meaning. She wasn't just cooking for Julian. She was cooking for family, for love, for the history that united them. She ground the spices with the meticulousness her grandmother had taught her. She added the roux, the seafood broth, the vegetables. Little by little, the gumbo came to life, filling the kitchen with an aroma that seemed to awaken ancient memories. "It smells exactly as I remember," Julian said, who had returned to the kitchen, drawn by the aroma. "It's like my grandmother is here." "Maybe she is here," Izzy replied. "Maybe they both are here, watching their grandchildren finally meet." While the gumbo cooked slowly, Izzy prepared the red beans and rice, the cornbread, and began to make the bread pudding. Each dish was a work of art, prepared with the care and love that only a true cook can give. But what they didn't know was that the night's real surprise was just beginning. In a kitchen drawer, there was something that would change everything they thought they knew about their family. What do you think is the true reason for the separation of Julian and Izzy's grandmothers, beyond social class? How does the discovery of their shared lineage and the song redefine their understanding of the mysterious phone call? Share your insights in the comments. A hidden legacy unveiled, as the gumbo simmered, filling the kitchen with an aroma that seemed to awaken ancestral memories. Izzy reached for a cloth to wipe her hands. She opened drawer after drawer, familiarizing herself with the kitchen's organization, until, in the last drawer on the left, she found something that took her breath away. Beneath some embroidered tablecloths, there was a yellowed envelope. It was addressed in shaky but clear handwriting. To Clara, my dear sister, may we meet again someday. With all my love, Eleanor. "Julian!" she called in a trembling voice. "What's wrong? Is everything all right?" He rushed into the kitchen, alarmed by the urgency in her tone. Izzy showed him the envelope with trembling hands. "Look at this. It was in the drawer, under the tablecloths." Julian read the address on the envelope and turned pale. "It's my grandmother's handwriting. I'd recognize her writing anywhere. But how is it possible there's a letter for your grandmother here? I don't know. Do you think we should open it? I think my grandmother left it there for us to find. For you to find." With reverential care, Izzy opened the envelope. Inside were several sheets of paper, written in the same careful hand. She began to read aloud. "Clara, my heart's sister. If you are reading this letter, it means that fate has finally found a way to reunite our families. I have kept this letter for 40 years, waiting for the right moment to send it to you. But I never found the courage. When you left this house after that terrible fight we had, my heart broke into 1,000 pieces. I was young, proud, and I thought I was right about everything. I thought my marriage to Arthur made me better than you, that my new life gave me the right to judge your decisions. How wrong I was, my sister. How blind I was to pride, and how deaf to love. All these years I have lived with the weight of our unsaid words, of the hugs we didn't share, of the recipes we didn't pass on. When my son Robert was born, the first thing I wanted was to call you and tell you. When Robert got married, I wanted you to be there. When my grandchildren were born, I wanted them to meet their Aunt Clara. But time passed, and the distance grew wider and wider. I asked about you, sister. I learned that you married John Morales, that you had beautiful children, that you were happy. I also learned that you became an extraordinary cook, that people spoke of your dishes as if they were blessings. I was so happy for you, but it also hurt to know that you had managed to be happy without me. It was a selfish pain, I know, but it was real, Clara. I want you to know that every day of my life I have thought of you. When I cooked, I remembered our afternoons together, learning Mom's recipes. When I saw my grandchildren play, I remembered how we used to play in Dad's yard. When I laughed, I remembered your laughter, which was always livelier than mine. Now that I am old, and know my time is approaching, I want to ask for your forgiveness. Forgive me for my pride. Forgive me for my silence. Forgive me for all the years we lost because of my stubbornness. I also want to tell you something very important. I saved all the recipes we learned together. All of them. I wrote them in a special notebook, thinking that one day I would send them to you, thinking that one day our children or our grandchildren could share them. The notebook is hidden behind the cookbooks, on the top shelf, if anyone from your family ever comes to this house. Please take it. They are our recipes, Clara. They are the story of our family, my sister. If there is life after death, If there is a way for souls to communicate, I swear by all that is sacred that I will find a way to reunite our families. I swear that love will be stronger than pride. I love you, Clara. I have always loved you. I will always love you. Your sister, who never forgot you, Eleanor. P.S. I have left instructions in my will so that if someone from your family ever appears, they are treated as what they are, true family. Izzy finished reading with tears rolling down her cheeks. Julian also cried, moved by his grandmother's words. My God, Izzy murmured. All her life thinking about my grandmother. All her life with a broken heart over that fight. What fight? Do you know what she's talking about? Julian asked. My grandmother told me something once. She said that when she was young, she worked in a very big house, in the kitchen, that she became very good friends with the lady of the house, but that afterwards they had a terrible argument, that the lady said very harsh things to her about her social position, about how a domestic worker couldn't pretend to be equal to the family. It can't be. Julian sat heavily in a chair. My grandmother said that to your grandmother? According to my grandmother, yes. That's why she left and never came back. That's why she never wanted to know anything about that family. But Izzy, that doesn't make sense. My grandmother wasn't like that. She was the most humble and kind person I knew. People change, Julian. Regret changes people. Your grandmother wrote this letter when she had already learned from her mistakes. Julian nodded, understanding the complexity of the situation. The notebook. Do you think it's still where the letter says? They both ran to the cookbook shelf. Julian, who was taller, reached for the books on the top. And indeed, behind a French cookbook was a hardback notebook, green in color, with its corners worn from years. Izzy opened it carefully. The first page read, Recipes of the Dubois-Vance family, for Clara and Eleanor, and for all generations to come. The pages were full of recipes written in two different handwritings, some in Eleanor's hand, others in a more youthful hand that must have been Clara's. Look at this, Izzy said, pointing to a page. Grandma Genevieve's gumbo. Clara says you have to cook the roux until it smells like heaven. Eleanor says the secret is in the New Orleans spices. They cooked together, Julian murmured. They were a team. They continued leafing through the notebook. There were recipes for all the traditional Creole dishes, but also small stories, personal notes, family memories written in the margins. On a page dedicated to bread pudding, there was a note that read, Clara makes the best bread pudding in the world. She says the secret is to make it with love and patience, like everything good in life. On another page, dedicated to homemade cornbread, it was written, Eleanor says cornbread is like friendships. You have to make them with care, with time, and you should never let them get stale. This notebook is a treasure, Izzy said. It's the story of our family written in recipes. And now it's yours, Julian said, as it always should have been. But then Izzy realized something. The aroma of the gumbo had changed. She rushed to the stove and saw that it was perfectly cooked, with the perfect dark color and the exact consistency. The dinner! With all the excitement of the letters, we almost forgot about dinner. We didn't forget, Julian said. I think the grandmothers were making sure everything turned out perfect while we read their words. Izzy finished preparing all the dishes. The red beans and rice were fluffy and perfectly seasoned. The cornbread had the deep flavor that only comes with time and patience, and the bread pudding had a silky texture her grandmother had taught her. Are you ready? Izzy asked. I've never been more ready for anything in my life, Julian replied. They served dinner in the main dining room. It was a mahogany table that could seat 12, but that night it would be intimate for 2. Izzy had set the table with the fine china she found in the pantry, candlesticks with lit candles, and in the center, a photo of the 2 grandmothers that Julian had brought down from his bedroom. When Julian took the first bite of the gumbo, he closed his eyes, and for a moment Izzy feared something was wrong. But when he opened them, he had tears of happiness. "It's exact," he said with a broken voice. "It tastes exactly as I remember, as if my grandmother herself had cooked it." "Because she did cook it," Izzy said softly. "Through me, using my grandmother's hands and the hearts of both." They ate in silence for several minutes, savoring not only the food, but the moment, the connection, the miracle of having found family where they thought there was none. "Izzy," Julian finally said, "I want to keep my promise. I want to give you my fortune, but not as payment for a dinner, but as what is rightfully yours. We are family, and family shares everything." "Julian, I can't accept that. I didn't cook for the money, I cooked for love." "I know. That's why you have the right to receive it. My grandmother always said that true wealth is found when you give without expecting anything in return." Izzy looked at him intently. There was absolute sincerity in his eyes. "What do you propose?" "I propose we become partners. You have the culinary talent I never had. I have the resources you need to make your dreams come true. How about we open that restaurant you've always dreamed of, not as employee and boss, but as family, as equal partners?" Izzy's eyes filled with tears. Her lifelong dream, the traditional Creole restaurant, could become a reality. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything. Besides, I think our grandmothers are listening, and I think they're very happy with this idea." At that moment, a gentle breeze entered through the window, moving the candle softly. It hadn't been open before. "I think you're right," Izzy said, smiling. "I think they're here with us." They raised their glasses of iced sweet tea to toast their new partnership, their reunited family, the love that had triumphed over time and pride. But the night still had one more surprise in store for them, something neither of them expected. And that would change everything once more. What is the most powerful revelation within Eleanor's letter? And how does it challenge Julian and Izzy's previous understanding of their family history? How does the discovery of the recipe notebook and its contents solidify their bond and their shared purpose? Share your insights in the comments. The grand opening and a long-lost family. After finishing the most significant dinner of their lives, Izzy and Julian sat in the main living room with the recipe notebook between them, reviewing the family stories written on those yellowed pages. The night had brought a connection neither of them had expected, but fate still had more surprises in store. "Do you know what strikes me as strange?" Izzy said, gently closing the notebook. "That your grandmother mentioned instructions in her will about my family. Do you know anything about that?" Julian frowned. He vaguely remembered his lawyer mentioning something about special clauses in his grandmother's will, but in his grief over the loss, he hadn't paid much attention to the legal details. "Now that you mention it, Mr. Thompson did say something about special provisions, but I was so devastated by my grandmother's death that I told him we'd talk about it later. I never went back to ask him. Do you think we should call him, even if it's late?" "Maybe. No, better. Let's go to his office tomorrow. But tonight is ours, our reunited families." However, as if the universe had been listening to their conversation, the house phone began to ring. Julian looked at the clock. It was 11 o'clock at night. "Who could be calling at this hour?" he murmured, heading for the phone. "Hello? Julian, it's Thompson. I'm sorry to call so late, but I couldn't sleep. I have very important information about your grandmother's will that I haven't been able to give you." Julian felt a chill. It was as if everything was orchestrated by a higher power. "Mr. Thompson, what a coincidence you're calling. We were just talking about that. Can you come now? It's very urgent." "It's 11 o'clock at night, Julian. Please, Mr. Thompson. It's about the Dubois Morales family. I think I found the person my grandmother mentioned in the special clauses." There was a silence on the other end of the line. "You found someone from the Dubois Morales family? Are you sure?" "Completely sure. She's here with me." "My God, I'm coming right over. Don't move from your house. This is extraordinary." 20 minutes later, Mr. Thompson was at the mansion's door. He was an older man, with white hair and a serious expression, carrying a worn leather briefcase. "Julian," he said, entering. "Your grandmother made me promise that if someone from the Dubois Morales family ever appeared, I was to treat it as an emergency no matter the hour." Izzy formally introduced herself to Mr. Thompson, explaining her kinship with Clara Morales Dubois and the entire story they had discovered that night. Mr. Thompson listened with growing attention, taking occasional notes in a notebook. "Miss Izzy Morales, can you show me some identification? Any document that proves your kinship with Clara Morales?" Izzy took out her driver's license, which clearly showed her full name. "Isabella Morales Dubois." "My middle name is Dubois because it's my grandmother Clara's maiden name," she explained. Mr. Thompson examined the document carefully. Then he checked some papers in his briefcase. "Perfect. Everything matches the information I have. Julian, Izzy. What I'm about to tell you will change your lives forever." He sat in the main armchair and opened his briefcase, taking out a thick folder. "6 months before she died, your grandmother asked me to draft a very special will, in addition to the main will you already know. Julian, there's a supplementary will that is only activated if someone from the Dubois Morales family appears." "A supplementary will?" Julian asked. "Yes. Your grandmother had a personal fortune that she had kept separate from the family assets. A fortune she had been saving for 40 years, with a very specific purpose." Mr. Thompson took out several documents and placed them on the coffee table. Eleanor Vance Thorne had a personal bank account with $3 million. She also had investments in government bonds worth $2 million more, and she had secretly purchased a property in the historic center of Charleston. Izzy and Julian looked at each other in astonishment. "What did my grandmother want all that money for?" Julian asked. "For this," Mr. Thompson said, taking out a sealed letter. "She asked me to read this letter only in the presence of a descendant of Clara Dubois Morales." He carefully broke the seal and began to read. "If you are hearing this letter, it means that my Clara has finally returned home, even if through her family. For 40 years, every dollar I could save, I put aside thinking of this moment. Every investment I made, every sacrifice I imposed on myself, was to repair the damage I caused with my pride. Clara, my sister. If your family is hearing this, I want you to know that this money is for you. It is my way of asking for forgiveness for all the lost years, for all the opportunities for love I squandered. But more than that, it is my way of ensuring that our families are reunited, not just in heart, but in deeds. Julian, my dear grandson, I ask you to share this inheritance with Clara's family. I ask you to see this fortune as what it is, the bridge that finally unites our families. And if possible, if fate allows, use this money to create something beautiful together, something that honors our family tradition, our love for cooking, our desire to feed not only the body, but the soul of people. The property in the historic center I bought specifically for this purpose. It is a perfect colonial building for a restaurant. I bought it thinking that perhaps one day our families could create together the traditional Creole restaurant that Clara always dreamed of. Yes, I knew of her dream, through mutual acquaintances. I always knew about Clara's life. I knew she was an exceptional cook. I knew she dreamed of having her own place. I knew she deserved all the good life could give her. This money is your inheritance, Clara's family. It is the love I could not express in life, transformed into the opportunity to fulfill dreams. Mr. Thompson stopped reading. The silence in the room was profound, only interrupted by Izzy's suppressed sobs. "I can't believe it," she murmured. "All this time, she was thinking about my grandmother. All this time she was preparing the way for this moment." "There's more," Mr. Thompson said. "The property she speaks of is located on the corner of King Street and Broad Street, right in the heart of the historic center. It's a 1,000-square-meter building, completely restored, with all permits to operate as a restaurant. Julian got up and walked to the window. He was overwhelmed by his grandmother's generosity, but also by the responsibility this entailed. "Mr. Thompson, what do we have to do for Izzy to receive this inheritance?" "I just need both of you to sign some documents, accepting the conditions of the will. The conditions are simple. The money and the property are divided equally between the two families and must be used for a joint project that honors the memory of the two sisters." Izzy paused thoughtfully. Everything seemed too good to be true. "Mr. Thompson, may I ask something? How did Grandmother Eleanor know my family would want a restaurant? How did she know about my grandmother Clara's dream?" Mr. Thompson smiled mysteriously. "Your grandmother Eleanor had her ways of staying informed. Charleston is big, but the community of traditional cooks is small. Eleanor knew that Clara had passed on her love of cooking to her children and grandchildren. She knew that at some point, someone from the family would seek to fulfill that dream. It's as if she planned all this," Julian said, "as if she knew exactly how things would happen." "Grandmothers always know more than they let on," Mr. Thompson replied. "Eleanor once told me, true love always finds a way to manifest itself, even after death." Izzy and Julian looked at each other. In their eyes, there was emotion, gratitude, but also a new determination. "What do you say, cousin?" Julian asked. "Are you ready to open our grandmother's restaurant?" "I'm ready," Izzy replied firmly. "But not just a restaurant. I want it to be a place where families gather, where traditions are kept alive, where people feel at home, and I want it to be a school too." "Yes," Julian added, "a place where we teach new generations to cook like our grandmothers, so the recipes are never lost. Traditional cooking classes on Saturdays and 1 day a week, free meals for families who can't afford it, just like my grandmother did. Just like my grandmother did too." That night they returned to the mansion with their hearts full of plans and dreams. But before going to sleep, Izzy wanted to prepare one last meal in the kitchen, where everything had begun. "What do you want for dinner?" she asked Julian. "Whatever you want to make. I completely trust your cooking now." Izzy decided to prepare something simple, but full of meaning. Shrimp and grits with Creole sauce, red beans and rice, and iced sweet tea. Everyday food, but made with the love that transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary. While she cooked, Julian watched her from the kitchen island. There was something hypnotic about watching Izzy work. Her hands moved with a natural grace, as if they were born to cook. And the most beautiful thing was that, as she cooked, she softly sang the same song she had sung the day before. "You know what?" Julian said. "I don't think I've ever seen anyone cook with so much love in every movement. My grandmother taught me that cooking without love is just mixing ingredients. But cooking with love is creating memories. And you, cousin, you create beautiful memories." When they finished dinner, they stayed in the kitchen talking about plans for the restaurant until very late. They had decided they would open in 3 months, enough time to make the necessary renovations and perfect the menu. "Tomorrow we start full throttle," Julian said. "We'll hire architects, designers, chefs, waiters. We're going to make the most beautiful restaurant in Charleston, and the most full of love. And the most full of stories," Izzy added. That night, for the first time in months, Julian slept deeply. He no longer felt alone. He no longer felt his life had no purpose. He had found family. He had found a dream. He had found a reason to wake up every morning with enthusiasm. And Izzy, in the guest room Julian had insisted she use, also slept, as she hadn't slept in years. Her lifelong dream was about to come true. But more than that, she had found something she didn't know she was looking for, a true family. But fate still had one last surprise in store for them. A surprise that would arrive with the restaurant's very first customer and teach them that some miracles are even greater than we can imagine. What does the revelation of the supplementary will and the great-grandmother's long-held plan signify for Julian and Izzy's destiny? How does their decision to open the Two Sisters Kitchen of the Soul honor their family's past and create a new legacy? Share your insights in the comments. 3 months later, the Two Sisters Kitchen of the Soul was ready to open its doors. The building had been transformed into a magical place that perfectly combined colonial elegance with homey warmth. The pink brick walls gleamed with perfect maintenance. The inner courtyard had become a garden full of aromatic plants and colorful flowers. The tables were made of solid wood, each with a tablecloth hand-embroidered by local artisans. And on every table, there was a small framed photograph of grandmothers, Clara and Eleanor, as children. The kitchen was the heart of the place. Izzy had managed to create a space where one could cook for 200 people without losing the homemade touch. The aromas wafting from that kitchen could be smelled from the street, attracting passers-by like a siren song. Julian had taken care of every administrative detail. He had hired the best staff, from waiters who treated every customer like family, to a local jazz band that came on Fridays and Saturdays to create a festive atmosphere. The menu was a culinary work of art. Izzy had included all the recipes from the family notebook, but she had also created new dishes that honored tradition while adding her personal touch. The house specialty was the Two Sisters gumbo, prepared exactly with the recipe that had united the families, but they also had jambalaya, shrimp and grits, southern fried chicken, and for dessert, Grandmother Eleanor's famous bread pudding. Opening day was a Saturday in December, perfect for a celebration. They had invited all the extended family they had been able to locate, the neighborhood residents, the market vendors, and several food journalists from the city. Izzy was nervous, but excited. She wore an apron embroidered with the initials of her two grandmothers, and had prepared everything with the care and love she had learned since childhood. "Are you ready, cousin?" Julian asked her, dressed in an elegant white linen suit. "I've never been more ready for anything in my life," Izzy replied. "I feel the grandmothers are here with us." "I'm sure they are. They're probably in the front row, admiring what we've achieved." At exactly noon, they opened the doors of the Two Sisters. The first to enter were Mr. Beaumont from the market and his wife, followed by the curious neighbors who had been waiting for the opening. But then something happened that neither of them expected. An elderly lady, approximately 80 years old, slowly approached the entrance. She walked with a cane, but her step was firm. She had perfectly coiffed white hair and wore an elegant but simple navy blue dress. When she reached the door, she stopped and looked at the restaurant sign with an expression Izzy couldn't interpret. There was surprise in her eyes, but also something that looked like recognition. "Excuse me, young lady," the woman said in a trembling voice. "May I ask why it's called the Two Sisters?" Izzy approached with a warm smile. "Of course, ma'am. It's named in honor of our grandmothers, Clara and Eleanor, who were sisters, but were separated for many years. This restaurant is our way of reuniting the family." The lady turned very pale. She leaned more firmly on her cane. "Clara and Eleanor. Clara Morales and Eleanor Thorne." Izzy felt her heart race. "Yes, ma'am. Did you know them?" "Child," the lady said with a broken voice. "I'm Amelia Dubois. Clara and Eleanor were my older sisters." The world stopped for Izzy. Julian, who had overheard the conversation, rushed over. "Ma'am, did you say Dubois?" "Yes, young man. I'm the youngest sister. The one Clara and Eleanor thought had died in the epidemic of 19... Izzy felt her legs tremble. Julian took her arm to steady her. "But that's impossible. Our grandmothers never mentioned a third sister, because they believed I had died, my dear. When I had measles at 10, I was so ill that everyone thought I wouldn't survive. They took me to a hospital in New Orleans. and when I finally recovered, my sisters had already left our hometown. Clara had married, Eleanor too. I was left in the care of some aunts. "My God," Julian murmured. "We have another grandmother." "All my life I searched for them," continued Amelia. "All my life I asked about them. I knew Clara had stayed in Charleston. I knew Eleanor had married into money, but I could never find them. Charleston is very big when you don't know where to start looking." Izzy began to cry. She couldn't believe that on the opening day of their restaurant, a grandmother they didn't know existed had appeared. "Mrs. Amelia," she said in a trembling voice, "how did you know about the restaurant?" "I saw the advertisement in the newspaper. When I read The Two Sisters, and then saw traditional family cuisine mentioned, something in my heart told me to come. I didn't know why, but I felt I had to be here." Julian looked at Izzy. They both knew this wasn't a coincidence. It was another miracle. "Another blessing in disguise, Aunt Amelia," Izzy said, instinctively using the family title. "Would you like to have lunch with us? Would you like to try the food your sisters taught our family to make?" Amelia smiled for the first time since she had arrived. "Nothing would make me happier, my dear." They led her to the main table, the table they had reserved for family. Julian rushed to get a third chair and an additional place setting. Izzy personally went to the kitchen to prepare the most special dish she could make. She decided to prepare the Two Sisters gumbo, but this time she would make it thinking of all three sisters. As she cooked, her hands trembled with emotion. It was as if the stars had aligned perfectly. The most important day of her professional life had also become the most important day of her family life. When she served the gumbo, Amelia took the first bite with her eyes closed. Tears began to roll down her cheeks. "It tastes exactly how Mama Genevieve made it," she said with a broken voice. "Exactly the same. It's like I've gone back 70 years in time." "It's our grandmother's recipe," Izzy explained. "They kept it in a special notebook, waiting for the day the family would reunite." "A notebook? It still exists?" Julian rushed to get the notebook they had brought to the restaurant, to keep it always nearby. When Amelia saw it, she began to sob. "This notebook! I helped write some of these recipes when I was very little. Look," she pointed to a page. "This crooked handwriting here is mine. I was 8 when I wrote this beignet recipe." The three embraced then. An embrace that reunited not only 3 people, but 3 generations of family love that had been waiting for this moment. The rest of opening day was magical. Amelia stayed all day, telling stories of when the 3 sisters were girls, filling in the gaps in the family history that neither Izzy nor Julian knew. Customers who came to the restaurant immediately realized they were witnessing something special. The energy of the place was different, full of love, reunion, small but profound miracles. At the end of the day, when they closed the restaurant, the 3 sat in the inner courtyard under the stars. "You know what I think," Amelia said. "I think Clara and Eleanor orchestrated all this from wherever they are. I think they made us find each other." "I'm sure of it," Izzy replied. "Everything has been too perfect to be a coincidence." "And I think we're just getting started," Julian added. "I think this restaurant is going to be a place where many families reunite, where many small miracles will happen." Amelia smiled. "You know what? I have a very big, very stylish house, and you have a restaurant that's going to need a lot of love and a lot of stories. How about I move into the neighborhood and help you with the restaurant? I know recipes that neither you nor your grandmothers knew." "Aunt Amelia," Izzy said, "nothing would make us happier." And that's how a dinner that began as an impossible challenge became the reunion of a family that had been waiting decades to be whole again. The restaurant, The Two Sisters, Kitchen of the Soul, became the most beloved place in Charleston's historic center, not only for its extraordinary food, but for the stories created within its walls, for the families that gathered at its tables, for the love that was served with every dish. Izzy never returned to her old life. She moved to a house near the restaurant, and together with Julian and Amelia, they created not only a successful business, but a new form of family, united by love, food, and the certainty that some miracles are so beautiful that they are worth a lifetime of waiting. And every night, before closing the restaurant, the three raised a glass of iced sweet tea and toasted Clara and Eleanor, the two sisters who had found a way to reunite their family from heaven, using love, food, and a dinner that changed everything in just 20 minutes as intermediaries. Because sometimes, the biggest miracles come disguised as the simplest things: a mysterious phone call, a wrong address, and the bravery of a woman who decided to cook with an open heart for a stranger who turned out to be family. And so ends the story of how a dinner changed not only two lives, but restored a family's place in the world, proving that true love always finds a way to manifest itself, even if it has to wait generations to do so. What an incredible journey of family, fate, and culinary magic. What was the most surprising revelation in this entire story for you? Share your final thoughts and tell us what country you're reading from in the comments.